Hey y'all, Dr. Brown here, back with another exciting histology video. This one's going to be an overview of the main connective tissues, except blood, which isn't really a connective tissue, and will get its own module. If you've read the introduction to this learning module, you already know why we're not putting blood in with the connective tissues. If you haven't, I'm sure you'll hear more about it lately. So connective tissues can be divided into two kind of main camps. The first of which we refer to as connective tissues proper, and these are your what kind of generic connective tissues. These are the ones that are going to connect stuff. And then we also have specialized connective tissues, and these are going to impart some other functionality above and beyond connecting things. And these include things like fat or adipose tissue, elastic tissue, etc. So what we're going to do now is I'm very briefly going to go over kind of the main connective tissues, show you some of their general features, and kind of get us to start thinking about how these different tissues are put together. But aside from the connective tissues proper, everybody else that I want you to know more about is going to have its own learning module later on. So this module is primarily going to be focused on the cells and extracellular matrix that give connective tissues their function. So let's get on with it, shall we? Our first form of connective tissue is called loose connective tissue, also known as areolar connective tissue, because the word areola means cloud, and these have kind of a cloudy appearance. Loose connective tissues are essentially biological packing material and serve to support and cushion other tissues, particularly epithelia that line lumens or empty chambers, in which case this is called a lamina propria when it's under an epithelium. You find these in the gut, the respiratory tract, and the urogenital tract. Dense connective tissue proper comes in two varieties. Dense regular connective tissue, which you can see on the left, has the fibers arranged in a regular fashion. That is, they're roughly parallel. If we look closely, we can see that all the fibers appear to be running pretty much from the top left of the image to the bottom right. There's some little waves in here, but they are very regularly arranged. Compare that to the dense irregular tissue, and you look here at the end of the blue arrow, you can see that the fibers in here are not running all long ways. They're running in many different directions, and they're kind of tangled up. So the word irregular in this case refers to the fact that nobody's running in the same direction as anybody else, and it's just a big, hot, tangled mess. Now onto the specialized connective tissues. The first of these is adipose tissue. Adipose tissue, as you can see, has a lot of what looks to be empty space. However, when this tissue, was alive, all these empty spaces in here would have been filled with lipid droplets, primarily triglyceride. So all of this would have been filled with fats. You can see that this tissue not only will provide some cushion, in fact you're probably sitting on it right now, but it's our main energy storage tissue. That fat is stored energy which our bodies can then burn, turn into ATP, and fuel our metabolisms. The next specialized connective tissue is cartilage. Cartilage has an extracellular matrix, which is all of this stuff. So the cells are these little purple dots like you see here, and then everything in between them is extracellular matrix. Like adipose tissue, cartilage is going to get its own learning model, so we're definitely not learning everything we're going to learn about cartilage here. But the main functions of cartilage is to provide support, and it comes in three varieties, which again we'll get into later when we're learning more about cartilage. But the thing to talk about now, since we're really focused on the extracellular matrix, since that's what gives connective tissues their job, is that all cartilages contain a whole lot of sugar out here in the extracellular matrix. Sugar is hygroscopic. It's going to draw water into itself via osmosis, and that extra water content in the extracellular matrix of cartilage is what gives it that springiness that it possesses. Finally, no discussion of support connective tissues would be complete without talking about bone, which comes in two varieties as seen here. Dense bone, or compact bone, is over here on the left. So this is compact bone, and the cells in here are these little darker colored ovals here. Here you can see there aren't many. This is a connective tissue, and it should be mostly extracellular matrix. The extracellular matrix in bone tissue has minerals in it. So there's a fibrous network, just like every other connective tissue, but in bone, minerals are deposited onto those fibers, which give bone its strength and resiliency. It's what makes it hard. The only empty space that we see in here is, it doesn't look empty, but this would be an empty space this one here, these are called haversian canals or osteon canals, and this is where the bone, gets its blood supply and its innervation. So other than these little spaces here, these little circles in the center, bone is almost all, compact bone is almost all extracellular matrix. You'll also notice, before I move on, one last thing, that the matrix of the bone is arranged into these parallel layers called lamellae. And this parallel overlapping arrangement of the layers in here is part of what gives compact bone its strength, and we'll talk more about that when we talk about compact bone specifically. Finally, over here on the right, we have cancellous or spongy bone. So the bone is this stuff in here. Everything out here in these huge empty chambers is bone marrow. So in cancellous or spongy bone, you have very large hollow spaces filled with bone marrow. We tend to find spongy bone at the ends of your long bones. So again, your femur, the part of your thigh bone that fits into your hip, that's largely spongy bone, whereas the shaft is more like the compact bone on your left. Like I said, guys, this is just a brief introduction just to kind of get you thinking about the different tissues, and in following modules, we'll talk more about these as time permits. So that's all for now. Study hard. See you later.